Earthbound USA is a film that's been in production for about 10 years now, which is pretty much how long I've been a fan of Earthbound, aka Mother 2 for. I played the game for the very first time in my sophomore year of high school on a Windows Vista PC and various crummy laptops after discovering emulation. Because this predated the first official port on Wii U, and I did not have a job yet, so I couldn't afford an original cartridge. Wait, I still can't afford it now. Anyway, I carried around my save file on a thumb drive, mainly so I could show other people how wild this game was. At my school, we were never assigned our own computers to take home. Instead, there was one big storage cart containing about 30 laptops that couldn't leave the classroom. So when it came time to use them, we would all just pick one at random. There were obvious asset tags to differentiate them, so I always tried to secure the same one. But it was never a guarantee, so I must have installed a separate emulator on each and every one. I played the game during study hall, but also sometimes during lectures, depending on how well the teacher was attuned to what we were actually up to. Believe it or not, the game didn't truly gel with me until I defeated the first Your Sanctuary Guardian and made it to Tucson. But then suddenly it all clicked, and Earthbound spoke to me in a way that no other game had. The humor wasn't just about being quirky and random. NPCs did say ridiculous things, but it's all carefully interlaced with genuine life advice, political critique, existential crises, subversive meta-commentary, and whatever other nuggets of genius series creator Shigesato Itoi wanted to express in the world he created. It's all things you'd never expect inhabitants of a town in a video game to be saying, and most of the subtext is still just as relevant then as it is today. This is also true for the game's sequel, which furthers the beautiful, colloquial dialogue you'd expect from Mother, though with a much greater emphasis on telling a rich narrative about loss and the true nature of humankind. These games resonated with me faster than any other media I had ever experienced, so it was only natural that the next step was to look deeper into this trilogy online. That is where I discovered the treasure trove of Itoi interviews that elevated my love for these games even more and cemented myself as a lifelong fan. His motivations for putting certain elements into the game range from emotionally profound to completely unconventional, like his desire to betray expectations and mess with the player. Itoi has such a fresh, unique perspective of the world, and Mother is essentially that spirit in a tangible form you can play. There was one notable constant I kept seeing as I read more about the sprightly soul of Itoi though, and it was the fact that the reason I was even reading these articles at all was because of the translation efforts of a little website called Starman.net. Now, I personally never posted on the Starman forums back then, but I was a lurker on it and sister sites like Tomato's Earthbound Central and Chewy's Yomuka. Because of these websites run entirely by the passionate Mother community, I was able to, perhaps somewhat unhealthily, study Itoi's work inside and out. If I were ever on Jeopardy, I could honestly only hope to answer a couple of questions, but you can bet I've got it covered when it comes to obscure Mother trivia. Yay for me. Suffice it to say, big names in the Starman community like Mado, Clyde Mandolin, Chewy, aka Lindsay Moore, and Reedman, Reed Young, became these legendary figures that inspired me as I began my path creating video essays about the series and engaging with fans. I have all of Clyde's Legends of Localization books. I've read just about every article on his website, and I've watched numerous complete streams of games he's hosted with his wife Heidi over the years. I've followed Lindsay's journey in working directly for Itoi's company, and Reed in growing his own merchandising business in Tucson, Fangamer. Now with a feature-length film about Donkey Kong Country, Earthbound, produced by Fangamer, premiering in the city at a theater on the same street I live on. It's a long street, so don't come looking for me. I was actually able to meet Reed in person twice and have conversations with many other old B pillars of the fandom like Plo, Stephen Campos, Evertrade, and Jazzy Benson of Earthbound Saga fame and the director of this film, who signed a banana for me as Venus like in the game. The peel is a little rotten now, so I'd consider it gently used, but if anyone would like to purchase this authentic autographed item for $7,500, trade for a Jazzy signed eraser, or roll of toilet paper, I'd be willing to part with it. Because of the live Q&A that followed the film and the discussions happening afterward outside of the theater, Reed described these screenings as mini Earthbound conventions. I moved to Tucson in 2018, so I was never able to attend Camp Fangamer, but I am grateful to have been given this opportunity as a taste of what it must have been like. At the Encore showing, I collected less perishable signatures in my copy of the Earthbound Handbook. I chatted with some of my heroes, and I met a few really cool fans who were simply eager to talk about what we all had just seen moments prior. I'm going to be honest, I actually enjoyed watching it at the cinema the second time around more so than the first. And that's for a few reasons. One of them was that the world premiere was held on a Monday night, which isn't ideal as I have to get up as early as 3:30 a.m. sometimes for my day job. But when I ordered the ticket, I didn't even check the calendar to see what time I'd have to be to work on Tuesday morning because I'm an absolute Earthbound nut and this was a golden opportunity. 7:30 p.m., Screen 3. My wife and I had just finished up our evening shift and we quickly stopped to get a slice of pizza for ourselves. I thought it was an Earthbound appropriate meal. We probably should have just left our stomachs growling though, as by the time we arrived, nearly every seat in the theater was taken. We were guaranteed entry with our tickets, but seating was not assigned. The theater had sold out that night, which meant we were stuck in the dreaded front row. Really though, I didn't mind too much once the film began because I was just lost in how good it all was. To be real though, I did start panicking about the meet and greet after that first showing, because as some of you viewing may know, I have severe OCD, so my anxious brain loves to ruminate on negative thoughts and regrets. Despite my interactions with the cast and crew members having gone decently well, I was so starstruck and nervous about first impressions that I didn't sleep at all that night. Not a wink. To make matters worse, Tuesday was the day I had secured an interview with Aaron Cargyle, the archival producer of the film. I wanted to bring my A game, but I was running on empty instead. I thought it'd be quite unprofessional to reschedule, so I powered through by downing some coffee and consuming every fruit, vegetable, and vitamin I had in my apartment. I'm telling you, the cholesterol-free energy from the signed banana was crucial in getting me through the Zoom recording, which, despite everything, turned out very well. I was able to stay determined during all of this because I held on to one of my favorite quotes from Itoy. Quote, "Whenever I'm feeling sluggish and exhausted, it's absolutely certain that good things will follow. When you're given an overwhelming problem you just can't deal with, the only way to cope with it is to completely mobilize your heart and your mind and make a strenuous effort to get through it." Unquote. I will link that full conversation with Aaron in this video's description, so please check that out, but do finish this one first. I should probably give my thoughts about the movie now, huh? Well, I wanted to preface this quote-unquote review with my respect for and history with Starmen.net, because this documentary is the culmination of their esteemed legacy elegantly distilled into nearly 2 hours. Whether it be through interviews, written accounts, or scrolling through old posts myself, I had already heard about a lot of the information that's discussed in the movie in one form or another, but never in such a concise and engaging way. What was in it for me as a longtime researcher of this series was all of the archived footage from Steven Campos, aka Plo, that I had never seen before. A significant majority of the home video footage that makes up the documentary is thanks to him, for being that guy who always carried around a video camera, pointing it at his friends and telling them to do something funny. He claims that this didn't make him very popular, but it was all worth it in the end, because these precious moments of an era past are now immortalized to Mario paint a more accurate picture of what happened at these meetups and conventions without having to rely solely on recounted memories. Which, let's face it, the human mind can forget crucial details. Thanks to the Starmen.net YouTube channel, I was familiar with plenty of the more famous pre-existing footage that's publicly available, but this film chronicles more personal moments from these people I've looked up to for a very long time now to tell a cohesive story about the early days of the internet and making friends online at a time when that was a novel concept. This is a complete narrative about the earliest generation of Earthbound fans. The immense struggle they had when the sequel was delayed, then cancelled, and finally released years later, but only in Japan. I was born exactly 1 month and 17 days after Earthbound had been released in the United States. So I was less than 1 year old when people like Reed were experiencing the game for the first time and having it influence them. I first picked up a video game controller when I was 2 to 3, so I learned how to play on a Super Nintendo, but my family never owned Earthbound. When I first tried it and became a fan in 2010 then, the game was 15 years old at that point. The sequel had come out in Japan, and fans in the West had already banded together to create the English fan translation patch. What I'm getting at is, I was not around for the prolonged period of waiting to play the sequel to my favorite game. I missed the various petitions and sieges that went down to get Nintendo to give us more Earthbound. Had I been born earlier and played the game at the right time, you can bet I'd have been involved, but as it stands, I'm part of the next generation of fans. You know, it's like I and many other current creators are adding on top of this foundation that was built for us by Starmen. They're the ones we construct statues of to honor, because all of the analysis videos I make today would not be possible without their sacrifices. Would Nintendo have even ever released their English port of Mother 1 as Earthbound Beginnings had they not known the demand was so strong? Or would it just be collecting dust in their archives? I do think it only surfaced then so they could simmer us fans down a little bit. Imagine Mother 3 still not being playable in another language than Japanese. Without an avid fan community keeping these games alive, Earthbound's presence in the West would have just fallen into complete obscurity as a bit of fun Nintendo trivia. I owe so much of what I do to the generation that came before me in that regard. And the least I can do is encourage you all to support the telling of their story by sitting down with this film. Watch it via streaming, pick up the upcoming Blu-ray with bonus features, get the word out, dress up as the movie poster and go rap about it in public. I think anyone who calls themselves an Earthbound fan owes it to themselves and to the rest of the community to watch this thing for a better understanding of how we all got here. Earthbound USA is a must-see for anyone who loves the game. And coming from that encore screening where half of the audience raised their hands when asked the question, who here has never played Earthbound before, yet they all still gave a roaring applause, proved to me that this film has appeal outside of the fanbase that already exists. My wife, for example, joined me for the initial premiere and gave her official seal of quality, having only really heard about these games through me. Do you perhaps want to induct others into the cult of Earthbound but have trouble getting them to try it? You could point them to this YouTube channel called Mother 3, and forcing them to watch you play might do the trick, but I'd wager that it's easier to convince a group of people to sit down and enjoy a movie rather than sit through the first couple of hours of an admittedly slow to start RPG. No subliminal message is necessary. Mother 3, Mother 3, Mother 3. I'm certainly biased in how much I enjoyed this documentary, but I think even with my background aside that it strikes such a wonderful balance between being silly and heartfelt. There are very emotional moments in the film, like Clyde associating the time of the Mother 3 fan translation with the passing of his beloved pets, and bad actors making a quick buck by selling the free-to-download patch pre-installed on a bootleg cartridge. Then there's funny little moments like his actor quickly running over to a computer and accidentally dropping his freshly microwaved pizza onto the floor, then picking it up and putting it back onto the plate, which is something that the real Mato would never actually do, according to Plo. Nevertheless, it's a funny little side gag. Jazzy explained in her conversation with Kat and Jess of the podcast Mother She Wrote that a lot of the documentary involves its characters sitting at a computer. Sounds like it could be boring, but its little moments of comedy and phenomenal set design filled with era-appropriate background details make what could have been a slog fun to watch. Take a look at the promotional poster designed and assembled by Audrey to get a firm grasp of the vibe you can expect going into this thing. If you're not necessarily an Earthbound fan specifically, but are enthusiastic about Nintendo games in general, I think there's a lot of value to extract from watching this as well. Since industry legends like IGN's Lloyd Schneider, Per Schneider, aka one of the reaction guys, and Nintendo Power staff members chime in who were there for and remember when the petition to release Mother 3 with over 30,000 signatures was sent out. Shigeru Miyamoto himself has officially commented about the petition in an interview, and his seeing it was reenacted for a scene in the film which was incredible. The actor's face is shadowed out, and he donned the same shirt Miyamoto wore during the E3 2004 Twilight Princess reveal where he appeared on stage posing with a Master Sword. One of the aspects I was looking forward to most was Jazzy, Reed, and other Starman.netters actually meeting Itoi for a sit-down conversation. This interview was teased in the very first trailer of the film back when it was planned for release in 2016, which has since been taken down. But I never forgot, and I've been wondering what was discussed in that room ever since. As a person who just can't get enough translated Chikasato Itoi interviews in my life, I dreamed about what juicy secrets were said behind closed doors. Of course, building it up like that in my head meant I was setting myself up for disappointment, but while I do think it was somewhat brief, so I hope we'll get more of the conversation as a deleted scene in the Blu-ray release, I do think that it was a perfect way to cap off the documentary. I'm satisfied with what was shown because we got, one, a couple of brilliant one-liners from Itoi. I'm gonna say it right now, his way of closing out the interview is probably the best thing I've heard all year. And two, we get confirmation about something I've been wondering for a long time now in regard to Nintendo and the Mother 3 fan translation. I won't say any more than that, but I do feel I learned a few significant new details in my apparent quest to acquire as much Earthbound knowledge as humanly possible. That is all. The movie satisfied my Mother obsession. And if that was obvious, then it was just so cool to see a deep dive into the golden age of video games and what that scene was like back when Earthbound was new on store shelves. This film is a time capsule that's an absolute joy to watch from beginning to end. It's not something I'm going to enjoy once and then just put away in storage. I've seen it twice now and I'm already planning on watching it at least 2 more times in the near future. Once more when it releases digitally, then again on Blu-ray of course. I'm sad to say that pausing the movie at the theater wasn't possible, so I can't wait to get my own copy and freeze frame certain scenes to see what Easter egg goodness I missed during those initial viewings. I deeply appreciate everyone for listening to me ramble on about my favorite things for however long this wound up being. I don't think I'm finished covering Earthbound USA on the channel just yet, as I would love to talk about my favorite spoilery scenes at length, but I'm going to give people the chance to watch it first. For now, you can check out my hour-long conversation with one of the producers of this film to learn the secrets of fair use and also mayonnaise hole. A super mambo combo shout out to my patrons of the PK Love tier: Brian and Susan, Captain Harlock, Dat Barry, Jennifer, Kathleen, and Tori. A huge thank you to my PK Rockin' tier Janssen, Brian Bauer, and Aaron Cargyle himself. Plus, this time I wanted to recognize the 3 third strongest patrons of the free tier: Samantha Chu, Liam O'Keefe, and Awesome Jacket Dude. Hello, and goodbye everyone.